Oh boy, where to begin with this mess. Well, how about the fact that to conclude the Danganronpa games of 1, 2, and Ultra Despair, instead of releasing a video game, they made an anime. Because they felt that putting the DR1 cast into a killing game again wouldn't be fun, and then they proceeded to put them in the killing game in the anime. Okay, so in my time replaying the games, I slowly started to unravel and understand the lore of the franchise, where they have the whole hope versus despair plot, and if you play the games and read the side material, a lot of things make sense, which is then so baffling to me that they ended on an anime. Naturally, this feeling was very true throughout the fandom, as so many people just like the video games. They don't want anime, they want to personally interact with the story, but no, now they have to just sit there and watch. I mean, they didn't even have to make it a killing game, they could have just gone the adventure route like an Ultra Despair Girls, and for me, this was extensively worse since I had to wait for the dubbed episodes to even come out to watch this thing, because there was no way I was going to watch it in Japanese. The last chance to hear my favorite characters, I needed an English dub for it. But as to the dub itself, well, let's see, where to begin? So Danganronpa 1 had an anime, and it was a pretty rushed retelling of the first game, but for the dub, which I'm guessing is due to unions and contracts, every single one of the cast was replaced, well, all except the main protagonist, Makoto. I don't know why only he was spared. Now after this, many fans wanted an anime of DR2, and yeah, that was here in DR3, where one half was in the past and one was in the present. But yet again, the dub changed the voices from the game. However, this time, a lot more of the original cast came back. Then again, my favorite character had a change, so instead of sounding quirky, which matches her personality, she now sounds like a punk rock chick. Yeah, it was the worst. Even then, after Ultra Despair Girls, one of my favorite voiced games ever, with nearly all of it being fully voiced, well, they replaced them all in the anime. It was just so disheartening even trying to watch this thing. Seriously, the new voice can't even do Jack's laugh like in the game.
Don't let the pearly white fool you, I'm a psycho killer!
Once you get used to one voice for a character, it gets really hard trying to think of them as the same person when their entire voice is different, and I get it's due to unions and contracts, but how can you have the voice of Hagakure not being able to voice him in the anime, yet the person is hired to voice act a brand new character they introduce? It's just so baffling.
Togami?
Name's Byakuya Togami.
Togami?
Togami.
Okay, well, with that out of the way, what's the anime about? Well, it's actually interesting how they split it. It had a Future and Despair arc. Future was continuing on from DR2, with the cast of DR1 as the Future Foundation forced to participate in a killing game with the other members. The Despair arc was in the past, showing how the DR2 cast came to be the remnants of Despair, also including Junko's events to the tragedy, i.e. the lead up to events of DR1. It aimed to fill both more of the story gaps, while also ending the whole Hopespeak Academy stuff in Danganronpa. And the episodes would air back to back, as in you would watch episode 1 Future, then episode 1 Despair, episode 2 Future, and so on. It was quite a unique way of handling it. Now for me personally, I didn't care much about the Future arc. I mean, when you have another killing game with brand new characters in a short episode limit, I really honestly couldn't care for any of them. And it was even hard to like the other ones since their voices were just different. Like seriously, why is Monokuma a gangster now? This is just the worst.
No worries, we'll treat it like a game!
I'm sure you can tell, I utterly despise a lot of things from this anime. However, there were some bright sides to it. For one, the animation actually was very well done. It was made by Studio Lurch, who I believe do all the animation for the series, keeping it nice and consistent with the things like cutscenes and UDG. Now I don't even blame the director for this on how the anime turned out, because I put this solely on Team Danganronpa and the decision to make an anime. The director even worked on one of the funniest anime I've ever seen, so I think he knows at least how to make decent anime when given a proper script. But back to the dub, because for whatever weird reason, it became a bonus for me to watch it over time. Yes, I know I said I hated it, but hearing those few reoccurring voices was one of the few things that kept me going. But the other was the absurd nature of the dubbed lines.
Huh. As if I even care. Get over yourself, slut. We're dead.
I mean, you probably already know the most famous one.
Kamakura, yes, queen!
Look, Danganronpa is not the most perfect in terms of its writing, but when you include lines like this in the final product, you can't just help but laugh at the state of the dub. And over time, it became something I looked forward to each episode, to see what other lines they could come up with. I mean, the very last line in the anime was an outtake they forgot.
Yeah, I don't get this either. Pretty sure I died.
Thank you. I'll be right there.
Anyway, I guess I should wrap up what the anime actually did in the end, since it is ending the whole Danganronpa Hope's Peak Academy. So there's this guy called the Ultimate Animator, and he was pushed by Junko in the Despair arc to create a Despair video to turn the DR2 cast into the remnants of Despair and start the tragedy. But now in the final episode in the future arc, he decides to make a Hope video, which would reverse the Despair in the world and fix everything. Now that's great. However, Makoto is like, oi no, brainwashing people into Hope is still very bad. They should decide for themselves. And I'm like, okay, fine, let's just end this now already. If you can't tell, this anime was the sole reason I started to hate the whole Hope vs Despair plot. So with the DR2 cast's help, they convince the animator to stop and also admit to causing the whole Despair thing, taking the blame away from the Future Foundation, and they sail off into the distance. Makoto then, with the surviving gang, rebuilds Hope's Peak Academy seemingly in a world back to normal. So yeah, that sure is an ending. I mean, it's so much worse because fans didn't get to play a game, they just had to sit there and watch this. Even more amusingly, was even though they brought back the whole DR2 cast, fan favourite Chiaki was still gone, as she's an AI and can't be brought back, and everyone who died in DR1 is still dead. It's like they tried to make a fan-pleasing ending, but still managed to annoy so many people. One thing about death in games is how shocking it was, and that your favourite character could be next, unless they are in DR2, except Chiaki. It really just removes a lot of the intrigue when you go back to replaying the game because you're like, oh, they're gonna come back to life anyway in DR3, what's the point? So yeah, I know this video was a mess, but to be fair, DR3 was also a mess. I still believe if they made this into a game like Ultra Despair Girls or even a mainline one, they could have explained what they wanted to. I know they said they wanted to make an anime to show the serious nature of it, but come on, I mean just look at some of these episodes. This was so hyped in the fandom for being the end to a long drawn out Hope vs Despair saga, and it did that. But I think with all that happened, despite it being a very well made anime, for what it was meant to explain, being the end of the Hope's Peak Academy arc and ending off all these character stories, I just wish they did it another way. But hey, at least because of it, they were able to then make Danganronpa V3, which then makes suffering through this a-okay in my book.
You think anime's just for nerds?
Well, duh.
Anime is an important part of our culture! I've loved anime as long as I can remember.